What's up? What's up, folks? Good afternoon. It is Baby Friday. I haven't done an actual live stream in so many months. It is measured in months since I actually streamed live onto the internet. And the last time that I did it, man, was pre-hiatus. And I've posted a few videos that I've recorded. But today on this Baby Friday, it is live. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know how awesome it's going to be, or if it'll even be permanently posted. But we're going to try because I am so excited about our DIY wireless subwoofer in a bucket. It is going really well, and I made a ton of progress, and I just wanted to stream because I want to finish this project so I can listen to music in my driveway once again, and there was a few pieces that are still stuck in the lab that I want to show, and then once I show them in the lab, I can put them out there and actually start listening to them, so I'm excited about that. On the last episode, I did some 3D printing and talked about CAD, computer-aided design, and I'm not good at it. I'm still very much a rookie, and I have my printer in the background right now printing out a new basically case for the components in my wireless subwoofer. And let's see what I've got on my desk right now. So here is what I am shooting for. I have designed this in Tinkercad, a very sophisticated drawing program. But I have a model of my power supply. That's this pink thing right here. And I'm using that as a basis for my whole case design. So I'm trying to design a few parts that kind of sandwich together to not only hold the electrical components, but also sandwich around the power supply while leaving plenty of room for airflow, because that little power supply gets pretty warm. It's a 24-volt power supply. And yeah, when I hold my hand next to it, it's pretty warm. And I want to make sure that it has plenty of airflow. So here's what I've printed out so far. You can see down here I have a case that kind of slides over the power supply. Let's move my camera a little bit. A case that slides over the power supply. You can see I got the case on top. And then on top of this little shroud that I printed, I have kind of a tray to hold all my components. Oh, before I get too far, let's actually start a timer. Since I'm doing this live, I wanted to make sure that I used a timer to keep myself on track, because otherwise I have a tendency to ramble. And when you record something and then post it later, you can actually edit it. But when you do it live, yeah, you need to keep yourself straight. And honestly, I just need to practice. So on the top, I have printed out this container that actually holds all my components pretty effectively. I have my mono amplifier. I have a linear power supply that feeds 12 volts to my subwoofer preamplifier. Over here, I have a power supply for the Raspberry Pi, this little guy right here. I have the Raspberry Pi. And then in the back, I have my digital to analog converter, my DAC chip, using signals from the Raspberry Pi. And this little chip right here, it's an isolated power supply. So it is, I talked about it on the last episode, but it's a misused 5-volt isolated power supply that I'm using to supply 3.3 volts to my DAC chip. And it's really important to keep the power supply on your audio analog signal chain. So the DAC, the preamplifier, and the amplifier, you need those power supplies to be pretty quiet relative to the Raspberry Pi, because the Raspberry Pi, talked about it ad nauseum, noisy power supply. That's why I'm using a linear power supply right here, the LM317 for my preamplifier, and then just a totally isolated power supply for my DAC. And that actually sounds really good. Man, I got a mosquito in here. It's driving me crazy. I think it's probably going to go up my nose eventually, and I hope I can avoid it. But some of the next steps that I need to make let's talk about what I've done so far. So far, I've been able to get music to stream to both my wireless subwoofer, which I'm showing right here, and the actual subwoofer is down in this bucket. I've been able to get music to stream to that, and also, see if I can get this wireless microphone to follow me, and also to my original DIY Sonos style audio amplifier down here on the ground, right here. I've been able to get music to stream both to the subwoofer and the amplifier, totally synchronized. Totally synchronized! And I'm using a piece of software called Logitech Media Server. Let's just take a real quick look at it one more time. So this is the Logitech Media Server, and if I go into Settings, over to Player, I can select my different amplifiers. So I have two things, my driveway subwoofer and my garage amplifier. Oh, Player. I can select Synchronize, and I have synchronized these two devices. So now when music plays on one, it plays on both of them, and this server keeps everything nice and locked tight. So it sounds like it's one system, even though they're not wired together. So ultimately, my dream is to have a lid on the top of this wireless subwoofer, along with some pipe to be the port, so it's going to be a ported sub, and out of this pipe will be my power cable, because I haven't figured out wireless power. If anybody has an idea on how to do wireless power both safely and economically and in reality, that'd be awesome. I'd love your suggestions. One of the things that I faced before on my original amplifier was a hum on the speaker when no sound was happening. So let's say I've paused the music, nothing's coming out, and I am going to get a sandwich. What would happen is when I pause the music, you would still hear like a slight crackle in the speakers. You'll hear that on your like home theater or hi-fi audio system. You'll hear the speakers have just, as soon as they get energized and the amplifier gets energized and starts getting ready to drive the speakers, there will be noise on the outputs. Modern devices like our cell phones and our cars will actually mute the output as soon as it detects a lack of signal. So as soon as no signal goes to this amplifier, it will mute the output. And this amplifier actually has a mute pin. And I'm trying to experiment with how to use that mute pin. And I think I go to the website for my driveway subwoofer, and I look at, so I'm using the Pi Core player on my Raspberry Pi. That's the brains of my wireless subwoofer. It's also the brains of my DIY Sonos style amplifier. And go into these squeeze light settings. So when I use Logitech Media Server, it sees all the squeeze light devices as potential speakers. So this is my driveway subwoofer squeeze light device, and I noticed that I could close the output if or at least squeeze light could close the output if it didn't detect any activity from the server. So if the Logitech Media Server is not sending a signal to this speaker, the speaker has a built-in subroutine, which honestly I was super excited about, because the last time I had to build my own built-in subroutine from scratch using some Linux services and Python. This is all built into the Pi Core player. I can tell it to close the output after 5 seconds if it doesn't have any activity. And I can also say, use GPIO pin, in this case 5, set to active low to power off my device. So this is going to say close the output, power off the device. Closing the output essentially sends a power off signal in this case is what I've determined. And so I wired this up to test it. So I want it to close after 5 seconds on GPIO 5. If I go to my webcam, you'll notice I actually have probes. There's a probe sighting. Haven't used probes in a while. Let me scooch this over a little bit. So I have a probe connected from my new oscilloscope. So over here, I have a new Keysight MXR oscilloscope, which sports not 1, not 4, but 8 channels. That's a lot of channels. We are going to be using probably 3 of them today, but I spread them out a little bit because I wanted to have some breathing room. But I have channel 1 connected to this mute signal on my amplifier board. And what I want to do is, as the signal, let's see, when there's no audio on my amplifier, this signal should be high. And sending the signal high mutes the amplifier. Now, how did I figure that out? That is a great question. And if you've watched the channel before, you know the answer is we probably consulted the data sheet. So if I go to my amplifier's data sheet and I look at the mute signal, I can see it's an input and active high. The outputs are high Z or off, which is really a weird way to say it, but that's what electrical engineers call off, high Z. And then low, the outputs are enabled. So the outputs actually output sound. We can see this a couple of different ways. If we look at the outputs, we should be able to determine a difference. If I change the state of my mute pin, I should be able to see a difference on the output, which is, whoop, we can't really see it because I don't have the camera turned right. This right here is my output, my actual signal output. I can probe that and change the state of this, and we should be able to determine whether the output is actually muted. And the other thing that I want to do is figure out if the current draw changes when it's muted or not. Because I want to make sure that I'm not burning a ton of current if I'm not actually sending any sound. Right now, let's see. I have this all connected, so I have it connected to GPIO 5 on my Raspberry Pi, connected to the mute signal. That is being probed. If I bring up my, let's see, picture of my scope, you can see channel 1 is right there, and the signal for, let's see if I can bring it up and look at it. There we go. The signal for channel 1 is way up here at 3.3 volts, which for Raspberry Pi's GPIO is high. That is up. And if we remember from our data sheet, high meant that my outputs were high Z or turned off. Now, if I play a song to this, my subwoofer in a bucket. If I play a song to my subwoofer in a bucket, I should be able to see this signal go low. And if it doesn't go low, then I won't get any sound out. So I'm going to play, let's see, let's find a song. Let's find a song. I think I can actually find a song that, let's see if I can find this. There we go. I can find a song I actually own myself, so I don't have to worry about copyright infringement. I can just say, that's cool, play it. So I have it playing, and now I want to connect to a device, and I'm going to connect to my driveway and subwoofer combo. So you can, I don't know if you can probably hear it in the background, but you can also see that the output went low. So now if I pause it, 5 seconds later, this output should go high. And then, boom, it did. It did. So that's awesome. That means that this mute is working great. What happens when I actually look at the output of the speakers? So as I said before, if you don't mute the output, you won't have, you won't be driving sound to the speakers, but you will hear noise on the speakers, just a low level kind of rumble, or sometimes you hear like junk from the Raspberry Pi. So I have a little probe here, and what I'm going to do is probe this signal. See if I can get a better, angle of that. I think I can. I think so. I think you guys can see that, hopefully. I'm holding the probe on those little signals. I need to turn this channel on. Here we go. I have a channel on. Let's look at it on the oscilloscope. So I am going to begin probing the signal. So, let's see. You can see am I probing the signal? Am I getting both sides? Kind of missing the sides a little bit. This is the problem with hand probing. I want to zoom in a little bit so you can see noise. There we go. There, I'm probing the signal, and that is muted. Now, if I unmute it, so I'm just going to disconnect this mute signal, boom. You can see that my noise goes crazy. So if I mute it again, so that is what mute is doing. It's keeping the noise from getting out on my speakers. Because whatever noise makes it to the amplifier input right here is going to be amplified and then sent out the output. If I turn mute on, then that disconnects the input from the output and high Z's the output. Now my other question is, what does that do to the current consumption? Like, does it actually reduce the current consumption? Because that's a big question I have. So I have my multimeter back here, and I need, oh man, I need to disconnect and reconnect some cables, because what Oscope Wizard would be complete without you watching me, whoop, pop the signal, without you watching me attempt to shock myself. So I'm going to pull the top off here so I can get to the actual power supply underneath. And I want to break the connection that is going to the ground side of my amplifier. So that is this black wire. It's one of the tricks when you don't have a clamp-on current probe, which oscilloscopes you can do clamp-on current probes. You can actually do clamp-on current probes with multimeters as well. And some of the multimeters have these big clamps on the top of them. You can clamp them around power lines and they'll measure the current for you. The downside of a clamp-on current probe is they can be pretty inaccurate and they have a lot of noise themselves. You know, that's just the deal. So I'm going to make some connections. So I need to make a series connection. So I need to go from the output of my amplifier, or the power input of my amplifier, from my power supply into the input of my amplifier through my multimeter. So I'm getting another cable in here that I'll use to connect to the high side of my multimeter, and then the low side of my multimeter will go to my amplifier. And you know what? Let me connect it all and I'll show you what I did. This is when I need like Benny Hill music so that you can follow along and be entertained. All right, so my red cable is one side of my multimeter, and then my black cable is the other side. So my red cable is going into my input. Let's see, and I need to move it over to the current side of things. Let's get my multimeter out so you can actually see. Let's see. I need to move this from the voltage input to the current input. I think this is all going to be in milliamps, so I'm going to use the milliamp side. my current measurement. Well, goodness gracious. Ugh. Got these fancy cables and they're really tight, which is good because they make good contact. But now I have my multimeter set up for milliamps. My multimeter set up for milliamps, and I need to replug in the power so that we can determine whether a mute actually affects the power consumption or not. I hope that it does actually affect the power consumption. I would like it to reduce the power consumption. That would mean when it's muted, it is actually using less current. So let's plug it in. Okay, it's using 1.3 milliamps. So pretty low power here. I'm not sure how long it's going to take for it to reboot. Find out. This is a great question. It's not rebooted yet. It's not rebooted yet because instantly I'll get some amplifier work. Oh, there it is. Okay. It's not using much current. Let's see. It's using 4 milliamps. And it goes down to 1 milliamp. So as soon as it gets muted, it actually does reduce the current consumption. So that's great news. That means that this is actually gonna work. If I go down to microamps, 30 microamps, if I actually play music, and actually if I just let the mute go on, it jumps up to 90 microamps. And the mute is off. So now the outputs are on, 90 microamps. The mute is on, the outputs are off, 30 microamps. That is excellent. That is excellent. Why? Let me disconnect something. Why does this show negative current? That's a little weird. That is a little weird. I would not. Whoa! Holy moly! Holy moly!
5 minutes remaining!
It's 5 minutes remaining. It's 5 minutes remaining. That's good though. It's good. I don't know why we're getting negative current. Why would we get negative current? I have it. Okay, I have it wired. Let's look at this wiring setup if I can. I have it wired from the power supply. Let's see. You see that? From the power supply to my red cable. My red cable is connected to my blue cable. My blue cable is connected to my current input. It's kind of what I would think. Does it want to be on the high side? So I'm measuring this on the low side to keep 24 volts out of the equation. This should be down at 0 volts. But the current has got to come back through that ground path. I wonder if I disconnected this and reconnected this and connected this into that side and connected this side. Now it's happy. That's weird. That's weird. Now it's 30. And it jumps up to 90. All right, well, I don't know. I feel like the current, my multimeter is showing me the current kind of upside down from where I would expect it to be. That's okay. That is okay because it is the same. So either way, it's either plus or minus 30 microamps, and it bumps up to 90 microamps when it's unmuted. If I actually play music through it, it should be significantly higher. Yeah, you can see. right, so 100 microamps. If my amplifier, let me just go back really quickly. I'm just really curious now. It's kind of got me wondering about these current measurements. So this TPA 3118, it's going into 8 ohms. It should be 60 watts into 8 ohms because it's 2x30, but I got it running in mono. So 8 ohms, 60 watts, 24 volts, or sorry, 60 watts, 8 ohms, 24 volts. If, if V equals IR, if V equals I, or so actually, you know what? Power is equal to V times I. So if power is 60 watts, and I divide that by 24, this thing should pull a maximum of 2.5 amps. That ain't too bad. But I'm only pulling 110 microamps, or that 0.11, is that right here? I think that's right. Yeah, oh, 110 microamps. 110 microamps. So that's 110 microamps. So that's I times V, 24. I'm banging out, what's this? 2 milliwatts of 2 milliwatts, not watt, not even a watt. I think measuring this on the low side is throwing my current measurement off. But that's okay. You know, next time on the Oscope Wizard, we will work on making a better current measurement. Maybe on the high side, we'll measure on the V out instead of on the ground side to figure out why we're measuring such a tiny current. 2 milliwatts. It's way too loud to be 2 milliwatts. It certainly can't be that efficient. My subwoofer in a bucket, there's no way it's that efficient. That's crazy. Now that I have sorted out that the mute does reduce the power, I'm going to add that feature to my original amplifier. I'm going to put that back out so I can start listening to music right now back in the driveway, because I'm really trying to get music happening in the driveway again. I really enjoy it. Hopefully everybody has something they really enjoy outside. One of the things I enjoy doing outside is listening to music. I don't know all the nerds in the world, and I would love to meet them. So if you have a nerd in your life who doesn't know about the Oscope Wizard, shoot them a link, oscopewizard.com, or send them a link to this video. I would love to meet them. Maybe they can drop in the chat and we can actually, type a little bit together. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.